James Holland, thank you very much for joining us from the UK.
Yeah, no, it's good to see you, Matt. How are you?
Mate, going well. I think we're all doing our best to cope. Where exactly are you at the moment? In a library, it
Yeah,
looks
yeah, I'm in my man cave. So this is a kind of little lean-to which we built on the end of it. We've got a sort of flat stone wall on one end of the cottage that we live in, and so it's a lean-to we built just after we moved here. And yeah, it's my kind of sort of den and man cave. But I live down in southwest Wiltshire, which is about I don't know 90 odd miles from central London, so just outside Salisbury.
beautiful part of the world. I'm
Yeah.
disappointed. I'm disappointed when I hear you say that because I was supposed to be in that area in June for the Chalk Valley
Yeah,
History Festival that you organised. Tell us all about Chalk Valley, that which unfortunately is not going ahead this year, and that I won't be
yeah.
participating in, but hopefully in the future. Tell us all about Chalk Valley.
Yeah, so we came up with this idea. I mean, originally it was about, this should have been our 10th anniversary this year. I mean, the original idea was to actually try and raise some money for the pavilion for our cricket club. And I had this idea to do a kind of like arts festival. And this guy I know called James Hennig, who was, he ran a book chain, quite a famous book chain over here called Ottokar's. And James said, look, that's all, yeah, I'm in for helping, but, you're a historian and I love history. Why don't we do a history festival? No one else is doing one. I went, do you know what, that's a genius idea. So we started off really, really modestly and it went down really well. Made a little bit of money for the cricket club. And then we thought, hang on a minute, let's do something a bit bigger here. So we massively expanded it in year two, and it's been kind of growing ever since. And now we have, I don't know, like 170 planned talks, various types. We have air show, we have massive living history encampment, live music, you know, tentage galore, beer tents, food and all the rest of it, and camping and everything you'd expect from a kind of, a festival, English summer festival. But it's great, it's really good fun. And it's so tragic because this year was due to be the absolute best one we've ever put on. I mean, in terms of programming and extra things we had and, but, what can you do? It's just one of those things, it's small beer in the big scheme of things.
Just add it to the list of all the wonderful cultural things that are not occurring. But as you say, I suppose we can't complain. Everyone's in all this, in all this together. How do you? A lot of people have been saying it's, harking back to the Second World War. We're at war again against an invisible enemy. How do you see that as an analogy?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, it's the deprivations, isn't it? It's a sudden sort of change of the pace of life and overthrow of everything kind of literally overnight. To your normal kind of way of doing things, which I think that's where the comparison is really valid. I mean, I think the other thing that's really interesting is I think the way to beat coronavirus, obviously you need the dedication of medical staff, and they've been incredibly courageous so far. I mean, I wouldn't want to be on the front line. It looks a really hairy place to be. But actually, it's like anything. It's to do with production, isn't it? It's who can produce the quickest kind of tracing app, who can produce the most tests, who can produce the most PPE and face masks and all the rest of it. And actually, what you need is not very well prepared and trained politicians. I mean, how does a health secretary prepare for an international pandemic? I mean, they go to Oxford University, they study economics, they then hang around the Westminster Village, eventually get a safe seat, become an MP. What does that qualify you for, apart from kind of hanging out with Westminster types? I mean, nothing. It certainly doesn't prepare you to be, handling a crisis of this scale. So what you need is technocrats, which is exactly what Churchill did in the Second World War. Is bringing in Beaverbrook and people like Oliver Littleton, people who were real experts in their fields and could make things happen. Could massively increase the production of aircraft or munitions or whatever it might be. And I think that's what we need in the UK, and I'm sure it's what other countries need as well. You need people who know how to make stuff and know how to kick butt, get through red tape, and make and produce stuff. That's how you get out of this mire. And I don't see enough of that happening in the UK at the moment. I wish it would.
Your timing could be considered even slightly poor with this lockdown, because you've just finished a book. Had you been in the midst of working on it, you'd had all the time in the world. But tell us about the Sicily book.
Yeah, so Sicily's done. I mean, I was always going to have that deadline. So actually, the first kind of few weeks of lockdown didn't really make a huge difference to me because I was intending to be on a personal lockdown anyway. And then anything, it just sort of, enabled me to kind of focus a little bit more and actually meet my deadline, which was a good thing. But for the last sort of 5 or 6 years, every May I've been away, doing whatever kind of, battlefield tours, filming, whatever it might be, or talks or something. I just never seem to be at home. It's always my kind of favourite month of the year. So actually to be here and sort of starting to recharge the batteries a little bit is no bad thing. So I'm in a much more privileged and lucky position than the vast majority of people. And I'm not about to lose my job or anything or have to run down a business. So I feel very, very lucky. But I'm going to start writing a novel, which is something I've been talking about for years. I've written a load of novels in the past, but I just haven't written one for a few years. So I've been so tied up with other projects. And actually, it's going to give me the opportunity to actually sit down and give it a go for the first time in a many a long year. So I'm actually quite looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm certainly mourning the lack of cricket. That's for sure.
So is that how you're getting through your time in lockdown, by lots of reading and hopefully lots of good writing as well?
Yeah, a lot of exercise actually. I mean, down in the country here, you're not in a major city like London, which is so vast. It's got 30 million or however many people there is in London now. So down here, there's hardly any coronavirus. And it's, if you're sensible and keep your distance and everything, you can go. I mean, I've been doing kind of big bike rides. I've been going for monster walks and that kind of stuff. And the weather's been fantastic, and the countryside looks so beautiful at this time of year. So again, I'm incredibly fortunate. So I've been doing a lot of exercise, to be perfectly honest, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
As a historian, do you something I feel, James, when I'm going through this whole thing is that we are actually, for one of the few times we can recognize we are living through a major historic event. It doesn't actually often happen. We often look back and go, oh, that was pretty significant what we went through. But we are daily now playing out an event that I feel people are going to be talking about, obviously, for decades to come. And in the future, I think they're going to look back and say, like the times of the Great Depression or the privations of the Second World War. Are you feeling that about this situation we're in?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a naturally very optimistic person, though. So I'm definitely in the kind of the half full rather than half empty camp. I'm probably in the kind of brimming over the top camp, to be perfectly honest. So I don't know. Things just I just don't want to get too down about it all. I mean, I am down about it, but of course, and it's horrible. But there's opportunities, aren't there? There's lots of good things. It's amazing that you now can see the water and see fish in the canals of Venice. The world pollution is less. All those sort of things. And I hope there's a better world emerges out of it. I'm not sure whether that will be the case, but you have to hope, don't you? It's going to be tough for a hell of a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people have got to deal with grief, but a lot of people are going to. I'm very struck by how many people might be suffering because of coronavirus, but actually don't have coronavirus. I mean, it's a friend of mine is a consultant in the local hospital, and he's just twiddling his thumbs at the moment because they've got to keep theatres, put aside for emergency operations on coronavirus should it come to it. And it hasn't come to it down here yet. So he's not doing enough. He's just not doing enough work. And that seems a bit crazy. And the number of people going in with heart attacks has dropped. But clearly there's not been fewer heart attacks. It's just that people aren't going in. So you worry about people kind of, just sitting at home suffering silently and stuff. So I don't know. But who knows? I just think the world's greatest brains are working on this. And 1 minute you see a lot of the news that's coming out is also incredibly contradictory. So on the one hand, it says, there's no chance of a vaccine for another 18 months. Then someone says, you hear some expert at Imperial College or Oxford or something, and they're saying, well, we reckon we want to have it nailed by the autumn. And then the next day, the health secretary says, oh, I don't want people to get too excited about vaccines. So which one is it? And I will always go for the kind of the better option. So, I'm sticking to the autumn, and I just think, with more ventilators, with more PPE, with more testing, with more tracing, with apps on phones, all the rest of it, we should be able to nail this sooner rather than later. All right.
Well, I think we all certainly hope that you're correct on that, James. I'm looking around the room there, and I'm seeing, apart from a library, I'm seeing a 303 rifle in the corner, which is getting me really excited because we have a show and tell segment, and that's not even what I suspect you're going to show and tell, but it's just great.
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in So this one I think is 1929. It's actually it's got a Middle East. That's actually Arabic on there. So it's a number 1 Mark III Start, which is what the British Army had at the beginning of the Second World War. It's a damn good rifle, that. I mean, it really is a very, very good rifle. The great thing about it is that when you pull back the bolt, it doesn't go back too far, which it goes back a lot further on the K98 Mauser, for example, which means that you don't have to change it. You know, when you're aiming, you don't have to change your position, which means a half-decent rifleman can fire off 30 rounds of this. Of course, it's got a magazine which takes 10, which is kind of bigger than just about any other rifle of the Second World War. So it is pretty good. But yeah, the thing I was going to show you, Matt, was this. I felt, you know, which to anyone might just look like a little bit of aluminium, but actually is part of the fuselage of the Messerschmitt 109E that was flown in the Battle of Britain by Hans Joachim Marseille, who went on to become one of the greatest flying aces of all time, if not the greatest. He shot down, I think, 172 Allied aircraft, all of whom were RAF, so none on the Eastern Front. And he had the dubious record of shooting down 17 in one day, so triple ace +2 in one day. And he was the most extraordinary man. Son of a general, but incredibly fey, really weirdo, a real weird guy. Very funny, and was completely burnt out. I mean, absolutely should have been taken off ops long before he was. What actually killed him in the autumn of 1942 was he was flying one of the new ME-109Gs. The engine caught fire because it doesn't have the it was too dependent on synthetic fuel lubricants, and the friction in the engine got too hot. Caught fire. He bailed out, hit the tailplane, knocked himself unconscious, so never opened the parachute, and died. He just plummeted to his death. Massive shock to people. But what's really interesting about this is, I don't know if you can see there, if I point my finger there, can you see that little round bit? Absolutely. Okay, that is the repaired bullet hole from the Battle of Britain. And the black bit, obviously, is the cross from the fuselage. So that would have been on the side of his Messerschmitt 109. I mean, it's a bit bent. I keep kind of wondering what to do with it. You know, I don't know whether to kind of, somehow frame it, but at the moment it just sits on my shelf. But it's a nice little relic, it has to be said.
Well, if you ever run out of ideas what to do with it, mate, I have a wall I can display it on out here in Australia. So, no, what a wonderful piece of history, though. That's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, no, it is
wonderful.
No, I'm a big believer in that. I think you need to kind of handle this stuff as much as you possibly can and test it. And you know, that's why I have the rifle. You know, so you can feel what it's like. You only by firing these things and handling these things and kind of wearing some of the. You know, it's not like I sort of sit around kind of dressed up in battle dress or anything. But I've got all that stuff because I'm kind of interested to know what it's like. And I think you get that kind of tactile link to the past with this stuff if you kind of actually handle some of these things.
Well, it's wonderful. James, thank you so much for taking the time. We've just recorded a great podcast about the Battle of Britain, which people can look out for on the Living History podcast channel. Your Sicily book is coming out later in the year, God willing, if the coronavirus allows that. So definitely look out for that one as well. And mate, everything you do is always well worth checking out. So I'd encourage everyone to check out your books and TV shows because they're all fantastic. And just thanks so much for giving us your time today.
Oh, cheers, Matt. It's always a pleasure.
I'm Matt McLaughlin, and thanks for watching Living History TV. Don't forget to subscribe for more great history content.